Hey Erica, how you doing? Okay, got your presentation up. Everything's looking great. I think your pages look fantastic. Really nice page mechanics, super inviting. So I think the presentation is definitely a success. There's a couple of areas where I'm just a little concerned um, in that they could have been presented in a more expeditious manner to engage the viewer even more than they already are through the presentation. Okay, the cover looks great. I think that the way that the cover mimics the background image is really super interesting. I think it's a really interesting way to introduce the viewer to your presentation. I would not use the same image on the second page. I think this was just really dying for some variation here, and I think that it would really create an interesting relationship between the first two pages if there were that variation instead of the sameness from the cover to the first page. Other than that, I think Welcome to Berchtesgaden and the introductory headline is really interesting. You assist the viewer in pronouncing the word, which I think is smart. It's a very difficult word to pronounce. Typography looks good, good typographic color, nice leading and kerning. It's not too dark, not too light, so it maintains very inviting consistency to the page through the text. Good job. Nice relationships, spatial relationships, good scale relationships through these spreads. I think the triangle is too much for the page numbers. I think I mentioned that. I'm not sure if I mentioned that before, but I just think it's a little forced. I would recommend just using the page numbers alone. I think this page is set up beautifully, just beautifully. It just really is so easy and consistent to follow, and the page navigation, as it were, is very very expeditious and very interesting page. Very nice job here. Okay, let's move forward. Again, same thing, another great page. There's a couple of areas here where I think you could follow a natural sightline. One of the things I would recommend here is if you follow this line right here, it looks like you have this line is lined up with the bottom of your colors. So that's a really smart thing to do. Let me check that. Yeah, almost. You're a little out of alignment there, but if this line were to follow this, could continue along the bottom of where the first row of colors is, I think that would create a really nice sight line. Again, and same thing here with this side right here. We go to page 7. Now we can just do that. See how just pull that down a little bit, and it will really create some interesting harmony in terms of following the sight line and line of continuation that the viewer will naturally follow. Okay, so other than that, this page looks good. You've got a couple of widows. That's a widow and that's a widow, and you don't want those typographic widows. That's something that you want to try to avoid. And a widow is a word that sits at the end of a paragraph alone, on a line alone. All right, pictograms look fantastic. These look great. Good job. These are fantastic. Really fantastic. I know I've mentioned that this looks a little forced. It seems to be working out pretty well, though. I'm not real sure what if that would be a feasible way of showing a UPC code. I'm not real sure if that would be able to be read by a UPC reader. So that would have to be something that would have to be researched. But I think it's interesting. I think at first I thought it was a little forced. I'm not sure. The one thing I do recommend is not placing the Olympic rings on their side like this. That would probably fall within a breach of branding for the Olympic rings through the International Olympic Committee. Pictograms look fantastic. Nice job. Really great job. Everything's looking fantastic. Just really nice work. Okay, the one thing I noticed, I've got some good placement shots. Everything's fantastic. Erica, really, really good job. Okay, I got a couple of notes up here in areas that I wanted to talk about. Okay, repeating image on the cover in the first spread. I talked about that. You're missing a table of contents. I would definitely recommend it in a 19-page presentation like this. I would definitely include a page table of contents to assist the viewer in finding the things that they need to find in a hurry. InDesign setup, 19 pages. Okay, I'll get to that in one second, but I just want to mention you're missing phase 1. All that research, you haven't really described to the viewer or convinced the viewer that Berchtesgaden would be a feasible place through your research, that this would be a logical place to hold the event. So I'm a little concerned that phase one is pretty much missing. You have a little bit here and a little bit in your welcome paragraph, but you go straight from your welcome page to your phase two, conceptual design. So you're kind of missing most of just all of phase one there, okay? And then environmental graphics, I would have loved to have seen some shots of environmental graphics. You know, things like event graphics, like the ski slopes or the logo on the ice rink and the inside of the ice rink, like kind of have a little bit here. But this is pretty nondescript, so I would have liked to have seen some further environmental graphics, especially things like you know, the venues, like how are the venues decorated with your branding. For example, some of the larger venues and some of the oversized graphics that are on larger venues. Also, things like banners and branding of the Olympic Village and things like that. A little bit short on that. And then this is InDesign setup, 19 pages. So one thing, you know, I'm going to show you this. Let me fire up InDesign, but I'm going to put you on hold for 1 second because it's going to take a second. So I don't want you to sit here and have to wait for InDesign to start up. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. So yeah, I just didn't want you sitting here while my InDesign started up. So, okay, I got InDesign open. Now I want you to see in your presentation here, you've got 19 pages. So having an odd number of pages forces your back cover to be grouped with your last page, as opposed, I should say spread with your last page, as opposed to back cover sitting alone so it could be spread with the front cover. Okay, so and the way that you rectify that is just in your setup, I'll just say File, New. Oh, I should be in InDesign here. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, File, New document. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say an even number of pages. So let's go from 19 just to 20. I'm going to make sure that facing pages is checked. Start on page 1. That'll start the numbering on the cover, which it should be. And then we say OK. And as you can see in this situation, what happens is the front cover is alone. That will be grouped with the back cover. And as we can see, here are all our spreads. So the last spread is grouped with, our last spread is set as such, and then the last page is alone because that will be spread with the front cover. Okay, and then so by setting up your InDesign document with an odd number of pages, you're not allowing InDesign to do that. So what it logically does is it takes the last page and it groups it with the last available page, meaning that your back cover will be grouped with the last page of the presentation. So this won't print correctly. Hope that makes sense. If not, let me know and I'll see if I can let me show you an example here. I'll show you the pages real quick. So here's your front cover, and then see how your back cover is going to be grouped with that page right there. So the front cover, that page 2 will be grouped with page 3, so on and so forth, and then finally page 18 will be grouped with page 19. So you won't have a back cover per se. Okay, I think that's all I have. Yeah, that's it. All right, so those would be my comments and recommendations. But fantastic job. All of your work looks really great. Your fifth element works beautifully to enhance your supporting graphics. And I think the project itself is a success. I just have a couple of these little kind of observations, but great class. Thanks so much for all of your contributions to making this a very, very interesting class. I really appreciate all of your critiques and your discussion board posts and your engagement within the class. Thanks, Erica.